This video is sponsored by Alcid eHomes, whose mission it is to accelerate the advent of sustainable, healthy living systems around the world.
Hi, and welcome to Best in Tesla. They say we are all in on EVs. They talk like they are already only selling EVs. The short seller has been screaming for years, the competition is coming, and the old legacy automakers will show someone like Tesla how to ramp up EV production. But this is not the case. The numbers don't add up, and the numbers don't lie, but what does the numbers say? Well, I would like to share some personal experience and look at the numbers that will reveal that the old boys are nothing but talk, and they think they can control this, but they are sadly mistaken. Let me show you why, and let's dive right in. I had a viewer writing in the comments about him buying a Tesla Model Y in Norway and would get it within 4 weeks. And he told his colleague about it, and she got kind of upset because she had ordered the Q4 Etron back in April and she would get it in April in 2022. Yeah, 1 year waiting time for the Q4 Etron. And I had a friend that also ordered the Skoda Enyaq in April, and they still don't know when they will get it. So there is a long waiting list on these cars, even though something like the Q4 have been out in all of Q4 and Q3. But then we look at the sales numbers, because if it's sold out 1 year ahead, there must be some crazy sales numbers. But the combined sales of the Audi Q4 Etron in all of Europe is 4610. Not 4680, but 4610 as writing this. So maybe 5,000 in 6 months. And that is what they can do? This doesn't make sense to me, because as we know, the demand is there, and the Q4 Etron is Audi's mass market car. This has a starting price that is lower than the Tesla Model 3 standard range. So why is Audi only making so few units of the one car that should become Audi's best-selling EV? And even if you combine all of the electric Audis, all the e-trons, we will still end up with only 22,000 units combined in all of Europe year to date. So if you say the average battery pack is about 75 kilowatt hours, well, that would mean that Audi only needs about 1.6 gigawatt hours for these cars. That is not much. They should not be battery constrained to make only about 35,000 EVs per year. That sounds way too low, right? But we know that the entire Volkswagen Group sold about 170,000 units in the first half of 2021, so maybe they will get close to 400,000 in all of 2021. And we know the average battery pack size is about 60 kilowatt hours, and Volkswagen have been selling the e-up and the Skoda Citigo and so on that only has about 32 kilowatt hours of batteries. So probably not far off to say the Volkswagen average battery size is 60 kilowatt hours. That means Volkswagen will use about 24 gigawatt hours of batteries in 2021. Is that really all they have access to? 24 gigawatt hours? If that is the case, how can they think they will catch up to Tesla? Tesla will get close to 900,000 cars here in 2021, and their average battery pack is probably more like 75 kilowatt hours. So that would mean that Tesla has access to close to 70 gigawatt hours of batteries, and Elon has been out saying that they will have access to twice that amount next year from the suppliers alone. This is without their 4680 cell, so they should be able to produce 1.8 million cars next year, or at least they will have the batteries for it. And Volkswagen will not start production of their own batteries before in the beginning of 2024, and that is only going to be about 40 gigawatt hour battery factory they will add on at that point. So Volkswagen has no chance to catch up with Tesla, even as a group, if this is actually the reason that people have to wait a whole year for a new EV from the Volkswagen group, unless it is of course an ID family, because those seems to be produced in pretty high volumes and has been the car Volkswagen has been really betting on. But that car is actually seeing a bit of demand problem, or that is what it looked like in China and here in Europe, with the high percentage of cars also being sold to dealerships and so on. But if we have to wait a year to get a new EV from the group, it doesn't seem like they are battery constrained with only access to about 24 gigawatt hours worth of batteries. This seems too low, and why would they say they would be able to catch up with Tesla if this is the case? Or does this have something to do with the semiconductors? Because they have been out stopping production line because of semiconductor shortage. So is this to blame for the low production numbers? Well, maybe. Because when we look at the numbers of EVs sold by these big boys, remember someone like Ford is only going to sell about 50,000 EVs in total in 2021. Quite pathetic, but does Ford really only have access to about 4 gigawatt hours worth of batteries? Seems unlikely that they are not able to get their hand on more batteries. And the same goes for GM, that is also not making a lot of EVs. Is 4 gigawatt hours of batteries really all they can manage? Or are they blaming the semiconductors? Well, looking at these numbers, it seems quite clear to me that the big boys are not as battery constrained as they may say they are. I mean, 4 gigawatt hours, come on. So I think the old automakers are still only making as many EVs as they absolutely have to, and then the semiconductor shortage came along and they had to choose what production line they wanted to shut down. Well, if they are in shortage of semiconductors, well, it does make logical sense, if they want to maximize profit, of course, to keep all of their ICE production lines open and shut down the EV production lines. Firstly, the EV takes up almost twice the amount of semiconductors than the ICE cars, so they can make twice the amount of cars if they go with the ICE cars, and that is still the car they make the most amount of money on. And when we're looking at the numbers, it is clear to see, even though they're talking like they're already Tesla and only making EVs, they are not really trying to make a lot of EVs. I mean, Ford will make 50,000 EVs in 2021. That is like 1.25% of their vehicle sales. So they still make 98.75% ICE cars. Yeah, they're not even trying to make a lot of EVs, but it is of course easy for them to just blame it on COVID or battery constraint or semiconductor shortage and so on. Maybe semiconductor shortages are playing a role here on the automakers' EV sales because they planned an absolutely minimum amount of EVs in 2021, but then came the shortage and they choose to stop the production line of the EVs and not some of the ICE cars, and therefore their EV sales will be lower than expected in 2021 because of the shortage, but not because they couldn't make the EVs, but because they choose ICE over EVs, even though they say we are all in on EVs. But this is a big problem that the legacy automakers seem to be blind to, because if they are moving so slow because they think they are so big, they kind of control the pace of the switch to EVs, they have a nasty surprise waiting for them. Not only will they leave a lot of room for Tesla to grow in, so all the talk about the competition is coming, but if they are producing these small amount of EVs, they are hardly competition at all, and Tesla will just continue to grow as fast as they can. But won't the EV revolution then happen slower because of legacy automakers not moving faster? I don't really think so, because every single automaker on the planet is making EVs now, except Toyota, and it all adds up. And we can see here in Europe, where we have over 100 different EVs models to choose from, the growth is looking very exponential and is taking shape of an S-curve, even though the old legacy automakers is choosing not to make a lot of EVs, and Tesla will continue to grow insanely fast, and so will the Chinese. Remember, someone like CATL is ramping up as fast as humanly possible and expect to be at 1,200 gigawatt hours of battery production in 2025, and Tesla will get a big cut of those batteries, and so will the Chinese automakers. And people are always screaming about, but EVs are not affordable enough. Even Ford CEO Jim Farrell said on one of the top priorities advice for automakers is to make electric cars more affordable for mainstream buyers. I'm deeply worried about the affordability. Average people cannot afford these vehicles, and we have a lot of work to make them more affordable. That's the one that's keeping me up at night. But that sounds again like a lot of talk, because Ford recently reported that the average transaction price in August hit an all-new record of approximately $50,800 per vehicle, a $9,700 increase over last year. So you can easily get an EV that costs less than the average price of a Ford. And again, just take the Audi Q4 Etron we talked about. It starts at about $45,000, and that is actually about the same price as Audi's ICE Q5. That is similar in size, and in the US you will get some kind of tax credit soon, and probably something like $12,500 on Ford's own Mark E. So that car will get far below the average price of a Ford. So Ford, they are pretty affordable already, especially if you take true cost of ownership into account, but Ford probably means really affordable cars for the true mass market. But as long as they don't make more EVs than they do, they will never get the economy of scale to help them out. And Volkswagen said they don't expect their $25,000 car before 2026. So yeah, the old automakers won't have truly affordable EVs anytime soon, but Tesla will in 2 years' time, and the Chinese, well, they kind of already have. Geely, which owns Volvo and Polestar, so we know they can make great EVs, just announced the EX3. And this car is an SUV with 500 liters of trunk space, so that is all good. But the starting price is going to be $9,200. Yep, that is less than the tax credit Ford will get on their EVs in the US. This is truly an affordable EV. So of course they are going a little bit on compromise with the range. It will have only about 325 kilometers NEDC range. So something like a couple of 100 kilometers WLTP range, and maybe something like 125 to 150 miles EPA. But will be able to charge from 0 to 80% in 30 minutes. So not totally bad, and it should have good safety as well, with dual airbags, reversing sensors and cameras, tire pressure monitor system, as well as ABS and EBD. The model also comes standard with high strength steel front and rear anti-collision bars. So all in all, a decent EV. But when we take the price into calculation of $9,200, this is an amazing bargain, right? It is also allowed to only have a couple of 100 kilometers of range for that price, unlike the Mazda MX-30 that have the same kind of range but cost about 3 to 4 times more. That car is not allowed to cost as much as it does. So the EX3 is not like the Wuling mini EV with no safety features, no room whatsoever. This is an electric SUV with good trunk space and much more range than the average driver uses per day. So this car could probably flood the market in China if they can produce it in high volume, of course, and because it's so cheap, it could very well come to Europe as well and could become a really big seller over here. Because even though if you compare it to the specs to the Tesla, it of course pales, but it will measure up to something like the Mazda MX-30 and the MG S6 and so on, and we do see these vehicles driving around here in Europe, but the cost is going to be much less for the EX3. If the Japanese and Korean automakers do not watch out, China could very well become the new car maker hub in Asia, because as we see in China with the Wuling mini EV, there is a very big market for the affordable EV. Even though they don't have any great specs or safety, people will gladly make compromises to get an affordable EV. So what will happen when Geely gives Chinese people a decent EV SUV for only $9,200? Well, we do all remember what happened with the little unsafe but very cheap Mini back in the days. Became a smash hit and sold in the millions. Or what the Hyundai Excel did for Hyundai, practically made Hyundai into what they are today with that little cheap car. And just look what's happening in China today with the even smaller and more unsafe, hardly a car, Wuling mini EV. It is the best-selling electric car in China. There is a huge market for cheap electric cars, and they are coming now. and in the next couple of years, but the old guys will not have anything before 5 years time, and not in high volume. So the old legacy automakers seem to still be dragging their feet because maybe they think they can control the speed of the switch of EVs because they are such a big part of the car market, so they have a lot to say. It will happen when they say it will happen. Well, I think Nokia kind of had the same thoughts when the iPhone came out. And just look at this magazine cover from the 13th of June 2007. And only 16 days later the iPhone was revealed, and in a matter of a few years, Nokia's not millions, but billions of customers were gone. And if Ford and GM does not speed up, they will be overtaken by Tesla in the US and in Europe, both by Tesla and the Chinese. They are not messing around, but it looks like the old legacy automakers are purposely making a small amount of EVs and blaming it on batteries and semiconductor shortage. But the Chinese and Tesla are coming, and they are coming fast, much faster than the old guys. They will be disrupted. Just look at Cadillac. The brand GM will make fully electric first, but only by 2030. But Cadillac only sells like 130 to 150,000 cars per year, and GM wants to drag that transition out 10 years. It will take them 10 years to make 150,000 EVs in a year. That has nothing to do with battery or semiconductor shortage, but has only to do with GM wanting to drag this out as long as possible, thinking they have some kind of say in it. But just look at all the new EV startups that are coming out. It is not going to be easy to ramp up production, but someone like NIO or Xpeng in China will already make over 100,000 EVs this year. So they will probably be making more EVs already next year than Cadillac will in 10 years. And that is the brand that GM wants to make fully electric first. I'm sorry, this is an absolutely joke. And Toyota is even worse off. They don't even have a single BEV on the market yet, and still betting on all drivetrains, wasting money and time on the wrong horses. Toyota is probably the most likely to be looked at as the new Nokia when we look back in 10 years time. The biggest in the industry that was a leader and an innovator in its time, but stopped innovating and did not see this disruption coming. And this disruption is stopping for no one. Get on the train or get out the way. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.